I think the United States has deployed an absolutely Herculean effort on the diplomatic side to always make sure that allies were informed, that there were consultations and coordination happening with European allies within the context of NATO. So I think the U.S. has actually done a very good job leading on the diplomatic coordination effort here. I think the other part of your question is really the key here. Why is it that when clearly Russia poses the greatest direct threat to Europe, not to the United States, that we have a situation in which the United States is once again having to take lead? It's the U.S. that's expected to send security assistance and military support. It's, again, the United States that has to get NATO allies, European allies on board. Unfortunately, it's impossible to talk about European position right now because Germany has been sending very mixed messages between the chancellor and the foreign minister, who seem to be speaking about two different policies sometimes. And then we have the Baltic states.
The foreign minister taking a much harder line from the Green Party than the chancellor, yes.
Exactly. And then, of course, we have the Baltic states and Poland, which have had very bad experiences back during the Cold War with Soviet occupation, raising alarm bells. And interestingly, the UK really taking that side and doing a lot more to raise alarm bells, to provide security assistance. But there is no European position. Europe is very divided. Germany is a key issue here, and the new government doesn't seem to have a real strategy or policy in place.
NATO has announced that it is sending more forces to Bulgaria, to Romania, to the Baltic states, to the Black Sea. That has included countries like France participating in those moves. And in fact, I think you could argue that NATO has, if anything, gotten stronger and more aligned because of the Russian behavior. Now, the one thing that would ensure that NATO is as close-knit and as high morale as possible would be if the Russians engaged in a full invasion against Ukraine.
Look, we've seen this movie before in some ways. When Russia invaded Crimea in 2014 and then launched this hybrid war against Ukraine's east that continues to this day, we really saw NATO united. And we really saw these Russian actions give new life to NATO. NATO has had trouble since the end of the Cold War really finding its identity again. And certainly that is no longer the case. And that's in many things because of Russian renewed aggression in Europe.